From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sueni Gray. The U.S. State Department has criticized Venezuela's decision to call a presidential election on April 22nd and said the U.S. would have to support the opposition parties. The spokesperson, Heather Nauert, tweeted the communique saying the United States denounces the decision by Venezuela's National Constituent Electoral Council to unilaterally advance presidential elections. We support the decision of the opposition parties to reject the regime's terms for elections that would not be free and fair. The National Electoral Council announced the election date just hours after talks with the Venezuelan opposition in the Dominican Republic collapsed. One of the main points of disagreement in Santo Domingo was the date of the election, with the opposition asking for the vote to be held in June.
We commit, as always, to guarantee all democratic conditions so that any difference during this coming electoral process can be solved through the people's vote, so that their voice, sacred and absolute, can be heard and that the people of Venezuela can decide our fate. We commit to the people of Venezuela and with everyone that has contributed to this collective effort. The National Electoral Council has been in permanent session since Monday and has analyzed a possible election date. Today, we have decided and we call for the presidential election to be held on April 22nd.
Our correspondent Laura Prada has the latest from Caracas.
It's nice to greet you from Caracas. Indeed, as you all know, last night was announced the official date for the presidential elections here in Venezuela for the 22nd of April. But today the news are that the European Union announced that they will apply sanctions to President Maduro and to the oil Venezuela produces. Also that Julio Borges, leader of the opposition who is representing them at the dialogues in Dominican Republic, said that they were going to meet to see if they were going to present a candidate for the presidential elections. The campaign will start next month, the 2nd till the 19th of April. This is all we have now from Caracas. We'll be getting back together.
We thank Laura Prada for that report. The former Prime Minister of Spain, José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, is one of the lead mediators in the negotiations, and he has sent a letter to each of the heads of the Venezuelan opposition parties. The letter confirms that the parties had reached a basic level of consensus for an agreement during the talks in the Dominican Republic, which included cooperation to face economic challenges and agreements regarding the election process and more. Zapatero said that it was unexpected to see that the document was not ultimately signed by the opposition, and the letter ends with a plea to the opposition to formally endorse the agreement in order to achieve peace and democracy. And the Venezuelan government has published in full the agreement it signed in the Dominican Republic, but which the opposition refused to sign. President Nicolas Maduro said he would be prepared to implement it even without the opposition. So let's have a closer look at what was in the Santo Domingo agreement. Both sides had agreed on working together to review and to rid of the sanctions against the country imposed by other nations. A second point included a series of guarantees for the presidential elections, which the opposition had pushed for, including an international observer mission, and another key issue that was also a demand by the opposition to reach a peaceful coexistence between the opposition-controlled National Assembly and the National Constituent Assembly. Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno says he has been vindicated by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights after it said it did not have the jurisdiction to rule on a request to protect the members of Ecuador's Council for Citizen Participation. Last Sunday's referendum in Ecuador voted to replace the council with a new body. The government had asked the court to reject the request from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, a separate body which argued that question 3 in the referendum had not been approved by Ecuador's constitutional courts.
The arguments presented by Ecuador to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights have been positively received, and the IACHR has decided to ignore the requests made by the Commission to implement measures for Ecuador. It's excellent news, and I thank them.
Bermuda's Senate and House of Assembly has passed legislation abolishing same-sex marriage 1 year after introducing it. A Supreme Court ruling last May legalized same-sex marriage, but in a non-binding referendum, Bermudans voted against it. Bermudan government officials said the act reinstates that marriage must be between a man and a woman, while at the same time recognizing and protecting the rights of same-sex couples. LGBTI groups have called the move a backward step. So I'm being joined now from Hamilton, Bermuda by Hywell Davis, who's a reporter at Bermuda Broadcasting. Hi, Hywell. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
So, very briefly, why is Bermuda repealing same-sex marriage?
It's not so much repealing it. There was a judgment last year by a court, Supreme Court here, saying that they had to allow it, basically. And what the government has done is put in legislation which bans same-sex marriage, because there's a lot of pressure. You have to remember is that Bermuda is quite a conservative place, very Christian, lot of Christian population here, and they're very opposed to gay equality in marriage, seeing it as between a man and a woman, setting introduction. There's a lot of pressure on the government not let same-sex marriage happen. What they've done instead is that you have civil marriages, so almost the same, you've got the same legal rights, but not quite the same thing. That's made a lot of the gay very angry, is that not full equality, like a step back from that. So that's the situation.
And the referendum that forced this new change apparently had a very low turnout. Is there any reasons for this?
Well, the referendum didn't come into force because it had to reach 50% of the population voting, and not enough people voted. It did vote, those that did vote, a majority of 2-1 was against same-sex marriage. But that's not what was called it, really. It was the judgment in May 2017 by a judge saying you have to allow same-sex marriage, cause controversy at the moment. That's now been overturned by the government. The referendum, in a way, irrelevant, but it was how much opposition to same-sex marriage here in Bermuda.
Thank you so much for that. We've been talking to Hywell Davis. He is a reporter at Bermuda Broadcasting. And we're going to take a short break now, so join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on. Welcome back. Social leaders will travel to Quito, Ecuador on Friday to meet with the National Liberation Army, or ELN, to talk about resuming the peace dialogue with the Colombian government. The group says Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos authorized the trip. The delegates traveling to Quito are proposing both sides take measures to decrease the verbal and military confrontation. And they're also asking for a new ceasefire agreement. The negative impact of Chile's pension funds after the U.S. stock market collapse has created anger, and social organizations are fighting to end the privatization of the country's pension system. More details in the next report.
With more than $20 billion, the United States is the biggest market for Chilean investment companies after the so-called Wall Street Black Monday. Chile's pension fund administrators, AFP, announced negative effects on the population, generating big concerns.
While we try to achieve our final goal, which is to reform our pension system in order to have better pensions for everyone, we want to protect low-risk capital funds, to give us more stability in the face of worldwide stock market difficulties.
The No More AFP organization said that pensioners are the ones who suffer the negative consequences of a speculative financial system, not the companies who control the funds.
In the long term, there will be no money for pensioners. We need to speak up about the need to change the system. We must end the capitalization of our pension system.
The system has been established in many countries around the world. The main objective is to force pensioners to depend on private investors, and it has been managed by 6 international companies.
The Chilean pension system invests more than $200 billion, which is equivalent to 75% of the gross domestic product. It produces great wealth, and at the same time it coexists with a lot of poverty. Pensions today are below the minimum wage, and they will continue to go down in the next couple of years, which is extremely bad for our people.
The privatization of pension funds is likely to increase social inequality and could damage the entire financial system. Political decisions are needed to change the pension system and guarantee Chilean people an honorable retirement.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza is in Trinidad and Tobago as part of an international diplomacy tour promoting peace and dialogue. He has met his counterpart, Trinidadian Foreign Minister Dennis Moses, who expressed his preference for a region of peace. Arreaza's tour follows a week-long tour by U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, which largely focused on gaining support from allies in the region to take action against the Venezuelan government. And earlier, Jorge Arreaza visited Suriname as part of a tour to strengthen dialogue between Latin American and Caribbean countries. Rolando Seguro tells us more.
Venezuelan diplomacy continues with the so-called Dignity Tour. Arreaza was welcomed by Desiree Bouterse, the president of Suriname, South American country which is a strong ally of Venezuela.
We and all countries, we try to live in peace, keep this kind of region as a peace zone. At the same time, we do believe in solidarity with each other, and in this moment of time when things are, let's say, very difficult.
The visit to Suriname's parliament marked another point in the search for joint working against adversity. Nicolas Maduro warned against threats aimed not just towards his nation, but also against the whole region. This after US suggested it might sanction and arrogate natural resources from other countries. Venezuela and Suriname are becoming very close in the current situation.
Brother, we can call that. The relationship is standing, and we are very delighted to receive the Minister of Foreign Affairs today, to have a good discussion with him about not only the relationship, the situation over there, and how we can move from here to the future.
The Institute for Venezuela-Suriname Cooperation was the stage for a meeting between both countries. Representatives from social movements and residents from both nations were able to hear about the situation in Venezuela.
Talk and think about the situation now in Venezuela. It's a very difficult situation, and we think we're going to study that, educate it, and when we have an input as the government, the Youth Parliament of Suriname, we can do advice to help, and we are ready to help.
If they are black,
Similar events have taken place during the last few days in Cuba, Belize, and Nicaragua, the previous destinations of Venezuela's diplomacy tour.
Evo Morales' wide social base is preparing for a day of countrywide mobilizations in support of his run for a third term as president. For more on this, we have a report from Freddy Morales in Bolivia.
Social organizations, which constitute the social base of the government of Evo Morales, announced simultaneous mobilizations in the country's largest cities on the 21st of this month. The mobilizations will express their support for the possibility that Evo Morales may run as candidate for re-election in 2019. On the same day, the 21st of February, the political opposition is organizing mobilizations against the postulation of Evo Morales for re-election. This is an issue already decided on by the Constitutional Court, which at the end of last year, by way of resolution, declared his candidacy for a third term legal. The opposition has included the OAS in a campaign to nullify the Constitutional Court's decision. According to the government, there is a campaign of lies on social media, which resulted in a negative outcome for the opposition. For these reasons and more, the 21st of February has become notorious in this country.
Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales is in Washington, D.C. Morales posed for a brief photo op with the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He also met with President Trump away from reporters before attending the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington. According to a statement by the White House, the two leaders discussed the situation in Venezuela and agreed to work together to restore democracy to the country. Trump also thanked President Morales for supporting the United States and Israel and for agreeing to move the Guatemalan embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Good afternoon, all. I want to welcome President Morales.
Grenada has celebrated its 44th independence anniversary. Meanwhile, CARICOM Secretary General Erwin LaRocque praised its commitment to the 15-member organization. The Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell, was congratulated by LaRocque, applauding his work during the hurricane season. LaRocque also emphasized that there is much for Grenada to be proud of.
Under Secretary General for General Assembly and Conference.
Carnival in Brazil started with the joy and music that it always brings, but this year there's a twist in the shape of a mass rally in defense of former President Lula da Silva. Our correspondent, Andre Vieira, tells us more in this next report.
Carnival in Rio de Janeiro already started, actually since December. But this year it will have a special surprise with sectors who will defend Lula da Silva's right to be a presidential candidate. Let's remember that Lula was condemned in January, which would keep him out of the presidential elections in Brazil. Lula's lawyers denounced this as a judicial persecution because there is not enough proof to hand out that sentence. They will look for help in other courts. After last Monday's announcement of Lula's sentence, his lawyers have 10 days to receive the notification and then 2 more days to present their proposal. This is what happens with the defense. But there is also a defense movement on the streets. Today we will accompany these blogs of the carnival that brings so much joy and happiness as a way of dialogue with people who come out to enjoy this event. This carnival, apart from the joy and amusement, is also a way to protest. And today we will witness the defense of democracy, Lula's right to be a candidate, and to denounce that clear fact that Silva's situation is the continuation of the coup d'etat started with the arrival of de facto president Michel Temer.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on.
Don't Trump, God bless Trump, we're gonna nuke you guys. F you, F you, F you. You're ugly and you have a flat face and an ugly nose. Put your hands on me one more time.
Run your mouth. Go back to
Listen,
Mexico.
I said, excuse me.
Go back. Where are you from?
We're gonna kill all of you. We're gonna kill every one of you fucking Muslims.
You're fat. You can't do anything.
It has nothing to do with
Your country.
Okay.
Because when I see you, I see that you are black and I see that you're not white.
Really?
So you are not like the rest of us.
Oh.
God help us.
Welcome back. In Spain, the Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy is insisting that Catalonia should choose a new president and not Puigdemont or Junqueras. More details in the next report.
In Madrid's ABC forum, the Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has asked the Catalan Parliament once again to elect a, quote, normal president, a president that is not involved in court proceedings, because Carles Puigdemont, exiled in Brussels, as well as Oriol Junqueras, who is now under arrest, could run once again for president of the Generalitat. The swearing-in of the new president must happen before April 6th. If a new president is not elected, then there would be fresh elections in May. Catalan Radio, RAC1, has suggested Elsa Attardi, Puigdemont's deputy, as a possible candidate for the Generalitat presidency, while Carles Puigdemont would run from Brussels. When asked about this, Attardi defended Puigdemont's candidacy. That's all we have for now.
We thank Romina for that report. The biggest workers' union in Germany has won the right to work 28 hours a week, along with a pay hike of 4%. Europe's largest industrial union, IG Metall, and the Work Employers Federation have agreed to reduce working hours from 36 hours to 28 hours a week for 2 years. For now, the deal covers some 900,000 workers. The union has been demanding an improved work-life balance to take care of their families better. In India, at least 33 people have tested positive for HIV after they were infected by a syringe with a syringe by a doctor. The file was opened after the suspect, Rahindra Kumar, who has gone into hiding, and police are still looking for him. Authorities say he's not registered as a medical practitioner, and the patients are now being treated in a government facility. Thousands of Palestinians have gathered at Gaza's border crossing with Egypt, hoping for a chance to leave after Cairo temporarily opened a frontier that's usually closed. Israel also maintains restrictions on its border with the Gaza Strip, maintaining the 2 million Palestinians who live there are rarely able to leave the densely populated enclave. Wall Street tumbled again for the second time this week. The major indexes dropped close to 4%. Investors dumped bonds and equities after failing to see a bottom in the market. The Dow recorded its biggest one-day drop ever on Monday, on fears that the Fed will be raising interest rates. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his country won't be pushed to renegotiation with the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, especially after U.S. President Trump's demands.
What I've said is, and I think the language of walking away has been taken as mirroring some of the things that the President has said. We have a different approach on that. It is that we will continue to engage thoughtfully, constructively at the negotiating table, because we know there is a good deal to be had.
And Canadian members of Parliament sang the new gender-neutral lyrics to their national anthem. The second line of O Canada's English version was changed to "In all of us command" from "In all thy sons command." Conservative senators opposed the change, arguing that it should have been decided in a referendum. The 2018 Winter Olympics flame has reached the South Korean city a day before the opening ceremony at the Pyeongchang Games. The flame has traveled 1,000 kilometers through 9 provinces and 8 major cities across South Korea. The torch will reach its final destination Friday, when it will light the cauldron at the opening ceremony for the 2018 Winter Games. And now for more world news.
The UN has announced that more than $1 billion in funding is needed this year to help millions of people affected by Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria. Almost $200 million will go towards programs providing food, shelter, clean water, education, and medical care.
As of 3 years ago, access to Maiduguri alone was a major challenge. But today, there are thousands of nationals and international staff that, owing to the significant security improvements, now reside in Maiduguri and are able to work within a zone that is still referred to as a conflict zone.
A court in Bangladesh has convicted opposition leader Khalida Zia of corruption and sentenced her to 5 years in jail. Police clashed with thousands of supporters outside the court. At least 4 people have been injured and 7 government officials have been arrested. Tensions continue to rise in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon as separatist groups demand the release of their leader and 46 other prisoners. At least 4 schools have been burnt down and 22 soldiers and policemen have been killed.
They are fighting against us because they don't want us to separate from them. But we have already made up our minds. We want autonomy from them. Yes, we don't want to live with them anymore. They have mistreated us for many years.
Israel and Lebanon have exchanged threats over a border wall being built by Israel. Lebanon has described Israel's border wall as an aggression, saying it intrudes into Lebanese territory. The Israeli government says the wall will be entirely on its side of the UN-recognized border.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.